Welcome. My name is Deanna Derhock of the AHA Network, and my guest today is David Kramer of the German Marshall Fund here in the United States. He is the former assistant to the Secretary of State on democracy, human rights, and labor. And he will share some of his thoughts on the upcoming visit of Vice President Joe Biden to Ukraine and to Georgia. Thank you. David, what do you think is the significance of the upcoming visit of Vice President Joe Biden to the region and to Ukraine specifically?
Deanna, first, thank you for the opportunity to appear again on the AHA Network. It's a great pleasure to do so. And I think it's very important that the Vice President is going to Ukraine as well as to Georgia. I think it was just as important that the White House announce this visit before President Obama goes to Moscow. It sends a strong signal of support to Ukraine. It sends a strong signal of support to Georgia. It sends a strong message to Moscow that the new U.S. administration is not pursuing a Russia first or a Russia only policy. And I think while it would have been even better if the President could have visited Ukraine, I think it's very positive that the Vice President is going on a visit just to Ukraine and Georgia. He's not going to Moscow, at least as far as I know, on this trip. So I think it's a very positive step. I welcome it. I commend the administration for announcing it now. And I think it will be an important opportunity to deepen U.S.-Ukraine ties, particularly with the new administration.
What do you think can be accomplished in this visit? And what kind of opportunities does it present for further relations between the United States and Ukraine and Georgia?
I think the visit is important. It comes at a sensitive time for Ukraine. It comes at a time when Ukraine is increasingly preoccupied, or at least the leadership in Ukraine is increasingly preoccupied with the upcoming presidential elections. The announcement of the date of January 17th for the presidential election is important. It gives some clarity that we have a date now. The campaign has been underway, at least unofficially, for quite a while. And the Vice President will be landing at a time when these politics will be unfolding in Ukraine. I hope that his visit will be an opportunity for the different Ukrainian leaders to come together in the recognition that improving ties with the United States is in Ukraine's interest. We also support stronger ties between Ukraine and Russia. It's not in anyone's interest for there to be a hostile relationship between the two. But I think having the Vice President go there is an opportunity for Ukraine's leaders to unite around some general themes, and that is that integration into the Euro-Atlantic community is in Ukraine's interest, not at the expense of ties with Russia, but that it is in Ukraine's interest to deepen its integration with the West, and that's something I think the Vice President can emphasize.
David, you have written about suggesting that President Obama put Ukraine on his agenda for a visit. Could you share with us some of your thinking in terms of what signal a vice presidential visit suggests, and share some of your thoughts that you have written about?
Having the Vice President go after President Obama goes to Moscow, but having announced it before the President goes to Moscow is important. Having the President go to Ukraine would have been better, but having the Vice President go is actually very good too. I co-authored an article with Damon Wilson about a month or so ago, recommending that the President stop in Ukraine on his way to Moscow. In some respects, it's even better that the Vice President go in a visit that is not connected to a trip to Russia. It demonstrates on its own the importance of Ukraine, also the importance of Georgia for the United States. And I think it is an opportunity for the United States to underscore its policy is broader than just Russia. The reset policy toward Russia has been a major focus of many analysts and the media, but it's equally important that the United States establish and put together a policy toward the other countries in the region. They are Russia's neighbors. They're just as equally EU's neighbors. And the EU has taken a step forward in May of this year with the Eastern Partnership, which the United States supports, in trying to deepen ties between the EU and those states in a so-called gray zone, Ukraine included. And I think it's very useful and important for the Vice President to go. He can send signals on the importance of getting Ukraine's leadership focused on the economic crisis, which has taken a terrible toll on Ukraine, on dealing with energy security, and reinforcing the importance of the agreement signed with the EU on energy infrastructure reform on March 23rd, stressing the importance of working in a cooperative way, but increasingly in a transparent way on an energy relationship with Russia, looking to deepen ties between the Ukraine and NATO, particularly given the Bucharest Declaration last April, which calls for eventual membership in NATO for Ukraine, if that is what Ukraine's people and leaders decide to do. A whole range of issues dealing with anti-corruption. It's a tough time to do all these things because of the presidential election that's coming up, but frankly, there's never going to be a great time. And in July, I think, is as good a time as any for the Vice President to go. It would have been a good time for the President to go. His schedule is even tighter. Of course, he has the G8 meeting coming up after his visit to Moscow. So I'm pleased that the Vice President is going. I'm pleased that the White House announced his trip well in advance of the President's visit to Moscow. That sends strong signals all around.
Do you foresee, as a result of one of these meetings, the creation of a vehicle to further bilateral relations, such as the Gore-Kuchma Commission or some variation of that commission?
I confess I'm not a huge fan of these kinds of commissions. They have their value and utility. They tend to become a bureaucracy in their own right, and sometimes that can be counterproductive. In the Bush administration in which I served, we tried the bilateral consultative group, which had great difficulty just agreeing on meeting, just because of the challenges of matching up busy schedules. At the assistant secretary level, Dan Freed, my former colleague, was in charge on the U.S. side. It's important to have efficient mechanisms to advance the relationship, but we shouldn't confuse mechanisms with concrete results and policies. These mechanisms, these commissions, can be useful in formulating these policies, but it's really leadership at the top. It's having a cooperative relationship between the President, the Prime Minister, the Speaker of the Rada. All of those positions are very important in terms of coming together on an overall Ukraine policy. That helps the United States engage. There is a perception in the West that Ukraine is just endless frustration in politics, that Ukraine is hopeless. I don't subscribe to that view. I think we often take for granted the positive presidential or national elections that Ukraine has had, from Orange Revolution election in December 2004 to 2 parliamentary elections since then. Ukraine has the opportunity for another free and fair election next January. Ukraine's media are the freest in the region. They're the most diverse. Doesn't mean they're perfect, but people have a choice, and that's really critical. We have separation of power. Certainly the Rada is not under the control or under the thumb of the Ukrainian president, and that's a good thing. So we have checks and balances built in. Doesn't mean that Ukraine's democracy is completely consolidated. It's still fairly fragile. But all the frustrations that many people feel and experience, I think, should not overlook the progress that the country has made. But it also underscores the importance of making sure that this election does not become an obstacle in Ukraine's